Thank you for joining us on this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel the Law Olawale. I have a very good guest today, and because she's a friend, a colleague, a lawyer, a magistrate, a writer, a wife, a parent, and a world traveler. Her name is Lisa Thompson.
Wow.
Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. You make me sound so exciting.
Because you are. Can you tell us a little bit more about your exciting life or your exciting self?
Sure. I am all those things that you said, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, originally. A product of the inner city. I graduated from Shaw High School. We won't talk about the year, and moved down to Columbus to go to law school here. Graduate of the Moritz College of Law, and but have been practicing law since 1997. And us lawyers aren't good at math, so I'll allow people to figure out the finer points. And I recently took a position in the Franklin County Court, Domestic Relations and Juvenile Branch as a magistrate. But all of my travel had been before I took the position. So all the experiences that we're going to talk about today happened pretty much when I owned my own law firm. And I had that law firm until about a year and a half ago when I joined the court.
So, wow. So you've been a practicing attorney for at least 25 years, and you've been a magistrate for about a year.
About, yes, a year. It was a year in August, so about a year.
So, what inspired you to even go into the practice of law or to become a lawyer?
It's going to sound really funny, but the show LA Law. And I heard recently that there was going to be a reboot with Blair Underwood. So I'm really excited to see that. But as a young girl growing up in the inner city, I mean, two-parent household, parents worked every day, very blue collar / middle class upbringing, but still surrounded by the inner city. And so I used to watch LA Law and dream and think, oh, one day I'm going to drive a Ferrari and I am going to have these beautiful conference rooms with, these beautiful mahogany tables and, have this fashionable wardrobe. And it's going to be so glamorous. And I have yet to get my Ferrari or any of that. But I do love the ability to be persuasive, to give my arguments. And I really liked when I was in private practice, because I did private practice. I worked for the government. I was a prosecutor, did all of those things. But what I really liked was being impactful in people's lives and representing the underdog, and also educating people about the legal system. A lot of times when people encounter the legal system, they don't know what their rights are. And I took great pride in telling people, educating them about the process and letting them make their own determinations about their cases based on the information that I gave them and what I thought was in, how they should proceed.
Thank you. Did you make that decision to become a lawyer in high school, or was it something you fell into while in college?
In high school, definitely. And as a matter of fact, I have to give a shout out to Miss Lori Uragati Eiler, or Lori Uragati now, but she was my high school. Gosh, it was I forget the name of the class, but it was a class all about law. And I took it in high school, and I even participated in the mock trial tournament. So that year, my team, my teammate and I didn't make it to the state finals, but some in our group did. And that was a really great experience because you had a case and you had to argue that case. And, some were prosecutors, some were defense attorneys, some of the people in our group were actors. And it was a really fun time. And we did quite well in the city, but we didn't quite do well enough to make it downstate. But I love that exhilaration of cross-examination, believe it or not. And my children will tell you that I don't know how to just ask them questions normally. I have to cross-examine them, but that's one of my great passions is getting to the root of the matter by asking very pointed, specific questions.
Is any one of you is any one of them following in your footsteps?
No, my oldest is a physical therapist, and my twins. My son is interested in film, and his twin sister is interested in engineering. So no one's going into the legal field. I do have a niece who's a lawyer, but my children are not interested at all. Probably because I cross-examined them to death as they were growing up.
Oh, wow. So you're the first lawyer in your family. How does your parents, how do they feel about that?
So it's so funny. Recently, I asked my mom something. I said, "Well, are you proud of me, Mom?" Maybe it was when I became a magistrate, and she said, "Well, how much more proud of you do you want me to be?" And that's kind of my mom's take on it. Like she's very proud when I do things, but like how much more do you want me to toot your horn? And my dad's very, he's the one who tells everybody who will listen, hey, this is what's going on. My daughter's this or she's doing that. He's always been that way. So it's a great balance in terms of a cheerleader and someone who will pat me on the back, but not too many times.
Because you're a trailblazer, being the first generation attorney in your family and things like that. Well,
Yeah.
great. And you've had travels all across the globe. You've been to countries in Africa, Europe, the Caribbean, the Americas, and you've been to several states within the United States. So, what inspired you to start traveling around the world?
So there are kind of two segments to my travel. The first is as a child, we didn't take a lot of vacations, but we did take some vacations. And I remember as a child being very small, not remembering much of the trip, but we went to California and we went to Mexico. And I don't remember enough about that to pretend that it had any imprint on me. We went all over the states and we went to Canada. So that was kind of my childhood. And also in high school, I was with a program called Upward Bound, and we went to Toronto and we traveled a little bit in the summers. So that was kind of my high school. And then I took a break for college and law school. As we know, you don't have a lot of money to go any place, especially when you start a family. So it's either am I going to Paris or am I cooking spaghetti tonight? So once the children had got to a certain age, then I began to travel as an adult. And so the thing that inspired me, honestly, I think that was your question. The thing that inspired me is it was my 40th birthday. And, of course, it's your birthday, but when your kids are grown up and you're married, it's another day. And so I was waiting for this big surprise party, Manuel, right? And I'm waiting for, like, I'm going to come home and there's going to be all this. And really, when I came home, there was like some cards and a cake. And I just got really sad. It's so silly to say. And so I said, you know what? Well, I'm going to go to a jazz bar. So I went to a jazz bar and I wrote myself a letter. And at the end of the letter, I said to myself, if you're not sitting in London, England, this time next year, it's no one's fault but your own. And so then I began to think about it because I had never really traveled extensively, especially on my own. And I thought, well, is that possible? And a few years before that, I had sent my oldest daughter to Australia on a people to people program. And so I knew kind of generally what the costs were, and we were able to send her with no problem. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that for myself. And so I began to look into it. And I was aided by my sister in law, who's a travel agent. And the first place I went, it wasn't London, but it was Prague. And it was a trip to Prague, Vienna, and Budapest. And I had so much fun on that trip that I did not look back. And I've been traveling ever since, except for COVID.
So, it was your 41st birthday gift to yourself.
Yes,
That was
yes,
what inspired it. What a
yes.
story. And if you can remember on top of your head, if you can, that's fine. How many countries have you visited so far?
I was counting. It's about 30 countries, I believe. And so then you get into this debate. Hey, if you landed there on a layover, did you really go to that country? And I don't mean to split hairs, but my thing is this: if I spent a euro in your country, I'm counting that country on a layover. So I mean, but outright, I mean, if we take off the hey layover countries, probably at least 28. So I've been to about 28 countries outright.
And what? Wow, 28 countries, that's a lot. And without being the Secretary of State.
I know because someone pays for our Secretary of State to travel. I pay for my own.
Exactly. And when you travel to a country, do you tour the cities? Do you visit historical sites?
It all depends on. So there are three types of vacations for me. I'll go with my husband. We'll have a couple's vacation, and or we'll do a family vacation, or I'll do a me vacation. And when it's a me vacation, it's very focused. I want to maximize my time in each place. So when it's a me vacation, I usually book a tour like through Trafalgar or Gate 1. And there's a specific itinerary that they offer that I've already determined that that's the itinerary that I want to do. And it goes to the cities and it does the things that I want to do. And sometimes if the tour is lacking, either at the beginning or the end, I will stay extra or come early and do some other travel outside of that. So, and when it's a family vacation, I'm on the back burner. It's all about the children and what they like to do and what they like to see. And then when it's a couples vacation, it's all about what my husband likes to do. But I'm one of those people. I cannot. This irritates my soul to just go somewhere and say, "Oh, well, we'll figure out when we get there." Oh, no, no, Emmanuel. I have to have it scripted from the time we land to the time it takes to get to the destination, from the airport to our first day. And to me, the day you land is a day of sightseeing. You'll sleep later. So yeah, I like to do different things, but it all depends on what I'm doing, who I'm going with, and yeah. But definitely, I like to maximize as much time in a city or in a country as I can. My motto is once I go there, I want to do it so marvelously that I'd never have to go back because I've had every experience that I want to have in that place.
So that means that you book your tours even before you land.
Yes. And let me be clear because there are so many people who watch probably have traveled, but for those who don't, there's different types of tours. So when I book a tour, say through Gate 1, I will book maybe a 2-week tour through Southern Africa. And that tour already has the destinations laid out, where we're going to stay, that sort of thing. But sometimes when I go on, like fly over maybe a few days early, I will do what's called a day tour. And that's through maybe a different company. And with a day tour, it can be anything. It could be a walking tour of a city. It might be a eating tour. When I landed in Barcelona, I did a tapas tour, and that was really fun. Or it could be like a catamaran tour if you're in the Caribbean, or once when I was in the Dominican Republic, we took a tour from Punta Cana to the capital, and the capital is escaping me right now, of the Dominican Republic. And we took like kind of an all day tour through the capital city. So tours can take lots of different forms, but when I book a tour, typically it's gonna be at least a 10-day tour overseas.
Okay. And you visited countries in Africa too. What are those countries you visited?
I went to the first tour was South Africa, Eswatini, which is formerly known as Swaziland.
Swaziland?
Yes, we went to Zimbabwe, which I loved. Oh, Zimbabwe is my happy place, and Botswana. I really love Botswana as well. That was in 2018, and then in 2019, my husband and I went to Morocco and spent time traveling all throughout the city. I mean, all throughout the country. We went to places like Rabat, Essaouira, Shishoun, Casablanca, Marrakesh, and I don't think we went anywhere else. We didn't go outside of Morocco that time, but next year we're scheduled to go to Egypt and also go to Ghana. So I'm excited about those two trips coming up.
I'm excited for you too. And as an African American woman visiting Africa for the first time, how did you feel?
I was thinking about that recently, and this is for those who maybe for those Black Americans who are watching your show who who maybe are from up north but have gone to Atlanta. That's what I liken it to. One time my husband and I went to Atlanta for a wedding, and we went to the Underground, which is a mall, I believe. And we were just surrounded by Black people, and it was a different feeling because usually when we go out and about in Columbus, we encounter a diverse group of people. But in Atlanta, everyone looked like us, and there were people who had lots of money who looked like us, and people who didn't have so much money that looked like us, and people in between. And there were all types of people, but they looked like us. And I thought, wow, this feels really great to just be surrounded by people who look like you. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying that I don't love diversity, because I do. I obviously have not moved to Atlanta. I love the diverse group of friends that I have. But it was just an interesting feeling being Black in America, and that's usually not the case. To me, visiting Africa for the first time was like that. I mean, even the flight from Amsterdam to we landed in Cape Town. Just so many brown faces on that flight, and I had never had a flight like that where so much of the plane looked like me. Landing in Africa, I mean, it was just like being in Atlanta at the underground. Like everywhere I turned, people looked just like me, and it was great. And it's so funny; they would look at me a little bit strange, kind of like, oh, like I wonder what group she's with. Oh, that American group. No one here, in South Africa. But it was just so comforting, and it was almost like going home or going to a really good friend's house where you can just kick off your shoes and put up your feet and get into their chips and their cookies and get in their fridge, and they are saying welcome, you're welcome to everything. And that was the feeling. It was such a warm and welcoming feeling that I had going there. We just had an amazing time. Just amazing.
Thank you. And most people, of color or people, in the diaspora of African ancestry, whenever they visited Africa, they have reported having this spiritual feeling of connection to the motherland, as if, wow, I'm back home spiritually. Did you
Mhm.
experience something like that?
I did. I did. So there was I remember we were on Table, we weren't quite at Table Mountain, but we were kind of in the area near Table Mountain, and I just remember there was a group of mothers who were singing, and I don't know what language they were singing in. I don't know what they were saying, but it looked just like my aunts and my grandmothers, and and all of those people who were singing. And there was just such a connection that I felt, and it made me think at that point, how much different would the lives of Black Americans be had we been not the ones who were taken, not the ones who were stolen? And what would I know what they were saying? Would I know the traditions that they were singing about? It just made me wonder. And so I know that all things happen for a reason. There was a reason why, I am here, and I know that you're from Nigeria, that you were born in Nigeria, I was born in America. I know that there is a reason for that because God doesn't make any mistakes. But it just made me wonder, as a Black American, what other connections might I have had, had I not, had my lineage not come from, a people who were stolen.
Thank you. And I think recently you did your DNA analysis and traced your route back to Nigeria.
I did. So I did the National Geographic. They don't do that anymore, but I did the National Geographic DNA test, and I think 73% of my DNA is West African, and a great majority of that, I can't remember what percentage, but it was a really, really high percentage of that was Nigerian. And so I remember you told me, you said, welcome, my sister. And that was just really nice to know that I could identify at least a place where my people came from, or parts of me came from, because there are also European parts in me, and like Iberian, parts. But it was just so comforting to know that there was a big part of me that was from Nigeria. So I haven't had jollof rice yet, so I know that's I got to try that to be like to really connect with my roots.
I'm saving you a plate at my house.
I thank you.
And I know you visited two parts of Africa, like the South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, which I would call like the black part of Africa. You also went to Morocco, which is, a lot of the white part of Africa. What are the differences you noted in the cultures between these two parts of Africa?
To me, Southern Africa was more diverse because you had so many, of course, native African groups there, but you also had a lot of, well, we encountered a lot of Indian people, or people of Indian descent, and kind of people like everything in between, you know. And Morocco was more, everyone seemed to be the same skin tone. So, but Morocco was interesting in that kind of I saw more of my genes, as it were, in Morocco than I did in Southern Africa. And that's only because walking the streets of Morocco, that we had one tour guide especially, looked just like my cousin Hope, I promise. And I had another tour guide who looked just like my cousin Robin. And, this guy over here looked just like my Uncle Titi or my Uncle Glenn. And it was just really strange in Morocco that I saw so many people that looked like members of my family. But when we talk about a connection, though, I definitely felt more connected in Southern Africa than I did in Northern Africa. And some other differences, just the food, the music was different. Um, there was a group, though, that we were privileged to hear, and I'm really straining my memory right now. When we were in Morocco, I remember we were, I believe, in Marrakesh, and it was towards the end of our tour, and there was a group, and it's I think a semi-religious group, but they're the darker Moroccans. And the word that I'm thinking of is not right, because the word I'm thinking of is a group that we saw in Honduras, but they have similar names. It begins with a G, but I forget what. But it was just so interesting because those were the darkest people that we saw in Morocco, and they played music for us. And boy, I was like, oh, these rhythms, I love these rhythms. Like I hear these rhythms back home. So, but there are lots of differences. But again, everyone was welcoming in both parts of Africa, so it was nice to get a difference of cultures.
That's awesome. And what was your experience like visiting Eastern Europe countries like Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Hungary?
The interesting thing is, I had a blast. So one thing you should know about me, or people should know about me, is I will have fun wherever I go because I feel like I work very hard, and I also feel that I should play very hard. So I didn't go anywhere in Eastern Europe or Western Europe or Central Europe and feel um, and felt that racism got me or anything like that. I may have had some brushes here and there, but I don't really feel like it was necessarily racism. It could have been because I was an American or something else. Um, but I had fun in those places as well. I didn't. The only place in Europe that I went that I felt a great connection to was Ireland, which is interesting because I believe that I have Irish ancestry, and so I felt really at home in Ireland too. But in Eastern Europe, I didn't feel the connection I felt in Southern Africa, but I certainly had a great time. The food was great, the music was great. And I have a theory that the farther east and south you go in Europe, the better the food is. And I know people are going to agree or disagree, but I think the food is better, the music is better, the hospitality of the people is better. And I just had a great time in the Czech Republic, and sometimes it's the places, but it's also the people that you go with. And on a lot of these tours, I've met a lot of great people, many of whom I stay in touch with today. And so it's the places, but it's also the people that end up on your tour. And I've had dud tours, but I've had really, really fun tours too. So it just all depends on that combination that you get when you step on the bus.
Thank you. And on the flip side, you also visited part of Western Europe. You've been to England, you've been to Ireland, you've been to those English and or Western part of Europe. How would you compare the cultures between those two parts of Europe and your experience as an American?
I feel that Western Europe is definitely a great place to visit. So when I was in the UK, it was interesting. I found that the Brits were very polite, but they weren't nice, if
So there's
that
a
makes
difference
sense.
between politeness and niceness.
Yeah, so it's so as Americans, we say, "Hey, how are you doing?" to strangers and expect a response. You do that in the
You're from the
UK.
Midwest,
From the Midwest, true. From the
not New
Midwest.
York.
Yes, that is true. That is true. So from the Midwest, when I say, "Hey, how are you?" I expect a response like, "Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?" And you can leave it at that. We were in my daughter, because I took my oldest daughter on her it was her high school graduation trip, so we went to the UK, and we were standing in the underground waiting for the subway, and I asked the guy next to us something like, "Do you know what time it is, or do you know when the train is coming?" He kind of looked at me like, are you like, why are you speaking to me? I was like, oh, sorry, I was just trying to get some help. So I think that Western Europeans, and I hate to generalize because, I met so many great people, but they tend to be more polite. But I feel that the Eastern Europeans are more are polite and nice, if that makes any sense. Yeah,
Yeah, I understand. Yes. So Eastern Europeans are genuinely nice. Western
nice.
Europeans try to be nice, but they end up just being polite.
Just being polite. I don't know that they try to be nice. I think that they just are. They're not going to hassle you, but also don't you hassle them. How's that?
Mm. Mm.
Just
So,
everybody leave everybody alone. They'll be
yeah,
fine.
exactly. So when you visit countries where they don't speak English, how do you handle that? How do you feel?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. How do I handle it? I don't know. I just get a phrase book. So in my mind, Rick Steves is like one of my best friends, and I know that that's not true, but I buy his books and I get his take on different destinations before I go. He doesn't write for Asia or Africa; he just writes for Europe. But I try to get a phrase book, and this is my philosophy. At least try to have the basics down. Try to have please, thank you, just the basics. My name is, and if you do that with a smile, I mean, I remember being in the middle of Budapest at like some kind of fair. Now, obviously, I'm not from Budapest. You can see that. I don't even speak like I'm from Budapest. But when I would ask people things with a smile, they would smile back and try to help me as much as they could. And so I think, the lack of English language doesn't bother me so much, usually because I'm on tour. So I cheat a little bit because I do have a tour director. But when I'm out and about on these cities on my own, I don't worry too much about it because I just try to be polite and try to be respectful of other people and try to do basic things like don't take pictures of people without their permission because you will get told in other countries, don't take my picture. Try to, just excuse me, be polite, and just try to follow the local rules and customs.
Oh. So a smile is a universal language. Everyone understands a smile.
It is. It is. Just say it and smile. And
Mhm.
if you notice people from other countries, if their English isn't good, they do try to ask questions and they do smile. And it makes you it's a smile that is disarming. And it's helpful. Hey, I'm not threatening. I just need to know, how to get to the bathroom. So
Exactly. Do you feel being treated differently because you're an American?
I do. I always default to that, especially overseas, because I found that overseas people have their problems and their issues, but they aren't America's racial problems and issues. So I don't automatically default to, oh, they treated me this way because I'm black. I default to maybe they treated me this way because I'm an American, and maybe they just don't like Americans. And I think when I look at it from that standpoint and that perspective, I mean, it's a lot easier to take because if I looked around the corner and thought that everybody, they skipped me in line or did something because I was black, I mean, I'd be laying in my hotel room crippled, not able to get anywhere. But if I default to the position of, well, maybe they treat me differently because I'm an American, then, then that's more helpful too. And that's probably what it is, to be honest. My son, uh, you know, and let me say this too. I don't want to gloss over the fact that there's not racism in the world because I know that if you're from the continent of Africa, lots of men and women from the continent are treated horribly worldwide. So I don't want to gloss that over at all. And I don't know why that is, but for me as a traveler from America, I try to default to the fact that I'm an American.
Yeah. Do you get special treatment because of your citizenship?
I think I do, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a form of privilege. So it's weird, huh, to be a Black American talking about privilege, but we are privileged. I mean, if we think about it. So one of the things, my son, who you met before the broadcast, he spent his first semester in Italy, in college in Italy. So he was in Florence, Italy, for that whole semester. His first time away from home, he was more or less he was in Florence. And my son is darker skinned. And I said, when you're over there, I said, whatever you do, speak. I said, because when you speak, they'll see that you're an American and you'll be treated a little bit differently. And he didn't get it, but I've just seen while I've been out and about in the world, how I'm treated as an American versus how other people from the continent are treated. And so I hate that I had to tell him about that privilege, but I tell him, if you're in Italy, speak, because they'll see you're an American, and you may get cut some slack, especially as a mom sending her only son, her only begotten son overseas, for the first time. But there's definitely, that blue passport. Definitely, there are, privileges that we get. I remember being, I think, in Aruba, and we were coming back from Aruba. And so, if you were an American citizen coming back from Aruba, there was a TSA line right there. So you got to kind of skip all the other, rigmarole that other passengers flying to other countries had to go through because you were an American, and you got to go through a dedicated TSA line, which is completely absurd because I've never seen that in any other country. I haven't been to every country, but there are definitely some privileges to being an American and being able to travel.
Yes, there are indeed privileges being an American. My wife and I and my kids, we notice that too whenever we travel outside the United States. Sometimes you're thinking, no, I'm Nigerian, but then people don't even see you as Nigerian. They see us more as an American than,
Hmm.
than Nigerian. So I can understand that.
Yes. And sometimes it helps to be Nigerian, and sometimes it helps to be just an American citizen, whatever
Exactly.
privilege you need to use.
You can just flip the coin. Yeah.
Yes.
And what are the insights that you have gained from visiting places where you don't even understand a single word of their language and you are meant to communicate through an interpreter? How
I'm
does that
sorry.
make you feel? I mean,
It makes me feel alive. It makes me feel great because it means that I'm someplace where I'm out of my comfort zone, and let's see what's gonna happen today. you
yeah.
know, I love it. I have a memory. I was in Turkey. That was the last European slash Asian country that I visited in 2019 before before the pandemic came on strong. But our tour director on that tour told us, hey, here's lists of words. We're going to do a home hosted evening. We're going to go into someone's home and they're going to cook lunch. And here, try these words. And I was like, sir, we could have had these on the first day. We could have been practicing. But it didn't matter because what I found is that even when you don't speak the language, the world adjusts for you as an American. And that's another bit of privilege as well, because a lot of places you don't really have to speak English because they speak English. And it would be places you would never think. I can't think of where we were in Turkey. I want to say we were near the town of Pergamon, and it just that pops in my memory because I know that one of the books or one of the churches in the book of Revelation was in Pergamon, and we were able to see it as we passed by. But we were in that general area, and the people, I mean, it was a town, Emmanuel, like a town. It was a town. There wasn't like a McDonald's on the corner. It wasn't like a big thing. And these ladies treated us so wonderfully at this home hosted evening, and they cooked for us, and they spoke English, and their English wasn't that bad, and they had iPhones, so it's interesting how people think of the world, and how if you're not in New York, or I'm going to say Columbus, or you're not in LA, then you don't know what's going on, like you're, woe unto you. But honestly, I think those people are a lot better off than we are because they hold on to so many of their traditions, and they don't worry about the things that we worry about. We're in such a rat race, and they're just living their lives and growing old gracefully.
Yeah. I think the world is so super connected right now, especially with the advent of the internet and social media.
Hmm.
Almost everyone across the globe can know what's going on in New York instantly. All they have to do is just get on Facebook or go on the internet.
Exactly. I found that a lot of people overseas know so much more about what's going on in America with our politics. They know where things are in America. They know who our sports stars are. They know who, um, they know when wildfires are going on. And if you pick any country in the globe and ask any American, first of all, where is it? Most of us don't know where it is. I'm just going to include myself in that. And then two, what's happening there historically, what's happened there, we can't even answer. I do. This is my plug for LeBron James. Anywhere I go in the world, when he played for the Cavs, they would ask me where I was from, and I would say, "Do you know LeBron James?" And they said, "Yes." And when I tell you, I'm talking, I was in Bosnia one time, in this very very small town, and this little boy was maybe 8 or 9, and he knew LeBron James. And when I was in the Dominican Republic, they knew LeBron James. When I was in the Bahamas, they knew LeBron James. I mean, like everywhere I would go, and I would say, "Hey, do you know LeBron James?" Well, yes. I'm like, "Do you know him?" No, 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 I don't know him, but I'm from the town that he plays in. Oh, really? And then that gets people going. But people know. I mean, from the smallest tots to the oldest adults, they know so much that's going on in America. We have no idea what's going on in their countries. It's pretty sad.
It is, yeah, but that's the reality of our time. And visiting these countries where they don't speak English, because literacy is defined as the ability to read and write. In some of these countries, they don't even use the regular alphabet, like going to Greece, going to like Turkey. How does it feel for you to be illiterate within their own context of literacy?
That is an interesting question. That's really good. I guess I am illiterate. I am the typical quote unquote dumb American when it comes to those other countries. But again, it doesn't bother me because I am there to learn. Really, that's why I travel. I travel to learn other I travel to learn other cultures. I travel to learn other ways of doing things, other ways of problem solving. I mean, let's say everybody needs running water. And the way that America approaches its needs for running water might be different than they do in Bosnia or Scotland or Turkey or, Egypt. So it's interesting how people approach a common problem. And the one thing that I really learned in my travels is, and this is not unpatriotic, but the U.S. doesn't have a patent on how to do things right. And so I love to learn from other people and other cultures how they approach the same thing. And some of these things, people have had solutions to problems that we're probably dealing with here in America. They've had solutions for centuries. But because they're not American solutions, maybe we don't look at those. But I personally like to talk to people and find out how they approach. Like, do you know, Emmanuel, of course you probably know, but in other countries, maternity leave is automatic. And you could get like a year of maternity leave. Like, I don't need it anymore. But that would have been so nice, when I was a mom and not have to worry about, am I going to get paid, when I had a child, and I didn't have insurance, or a leave policy. Like, am I going to get paid? How is this going to work out? How are we going to afford this? That sort of thing. But so many other countries make things like healthcare and maternity leave and all sorts of other things accessible to their citizens. And we could probably take a page out of other people's books on how to do that a little bit better.
Indeed, because traveling itself is education. If you don't go outside of your comfort zone or where the country you come from, you wouldn't learn or know what is going on out there. And sometimes you might not even be able to figure out solutions to your present problem.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
So, how do you decide which country to visit?
Well, so the other piece of why I travel is the writing piece. So those who know me or have been Facebook friends with me are going to find this so comical because I've been fixing to write a book for years and years. And to all those, I do have witnesses that know that I have actually written a book. I just keep sitting on it and won't like do the final edits and release it because it's like my baby, and I'm like rocking it and like patting it and changing the diapers, and I just won't let it grow up into toddler. But one of the reasons, or one of the ways that I pick my destinations is, hey, am I writing about this place in my book, or my books? It's really, Emmanuel, it's really like 9 or 10 books, but we won't go there. Um, so I will decide, hey, I'm writing about this place. Can I get there? Can I see it? And that's why I chose Prague as my first destination, because the book that I've been working on the most is set in Prague. And I wanted to get there and see, and I was able to look at the hotel where they stayed because I had done all this internet research, but wanted to see how it was. And so, I went over there and I researched and I had a great time. And now I feel like I've been pretty much everywhere that I wanted to go, except for some places in Africa. Not the places I mentioned, but I would love to get to Zanzibar, and I would love to get to Tanzania, and of course Nigeria. So we'll talk about that later, Emmanuel. I haven't actually got an invitation, but that's okay. And I also would love to go to Buenos Aires in South America. I've been itching to get there for so long, in Brazil. So there are lots of different places that I want to see, but I kind of go where I feel like I say, like, is any place calling my name? Is anyone calling for me? If it's calling for me, then I'll go there. And let's see, Egypt. So the Egypt trip, Egypt wasn't necessarily calling for me, but my husband and I had booked a trip for the fall of 2019. We were going to begin in Amsterdam and spend some time with a friend and then get on tour there. We were going to go to Brugge and to Paris and London. But of course, COVID, messed that up. And so, actually, it was the fall of 2020. I'm sorry. COVID messed it up. So we rebooked, and we were booked for Egypt. And the trip to Ghana that I'm going on with my family, and also a couple of cousins and their families are going. We're going there because the children have never been to Africa. And so I stumbled upon a tour, and it got really good reviews, the tour company. So that's why we booked Ghana. But I will definitely be looking for a tour to Nigeria because I definitely want to go there.
And you don't need an invitation to visit Nigeria because Nigeria is you.
I know, but I don't know where to go. So we'll talk later because I need to know
Yes.
where to go. I need a tour company. And let me say this, I am a tour girl. I don't fly anywhere and drive in other people's countries. I don't try to get my own hotel accommodations there. I am a tour girl. So we'll talk, and hopefully I can find a tour to Nigeria so they can do all the heavy lifting.
Yes, I can hook you up. Yeah, you also visited countries in the Caribbean, especially countries like the Bahamas, Jamaica, Aruba, just to name a few. And most of these countries are populated by descendants of enslaved people. How do you feel visiting these places and knowing the history of the people you're seeing that they are not natives of those places?
So it's really interesting. When I visit the Caribbean, it's almost like going to a cousin's house. So it's not your house, but you're related, and maybe they don't cook their baked chicken the same way, but it is chicken. So I love going to the Caribbean and seeing all the different iterations of Black people and how they mix with the local cultures there. And it's hard to get a sense of the original inhabitants of the island because no one really focuses on that. I know that when I went to Jamaica the first time, they talked about the Taino Indians, I believe, who were there, who unfortunately were wiped out due to disease. Um, but I really do like going to these places. The only place that I went that was problematic for me in a sense was when I went to Aruba. So when we went to Aruba, it was in November, and we were close to our Thanksgiving, but of course they don't celebrate that in Aruba. But it was more like the carnival season, and I didn't have too much familiarity with Carnival, but they had a big parade. It was either the day I left or the day before I left, and they were in blackface in Aruba, and these were and so these were the people that I saw were Black people, very 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 light skinned Black people, but they had on blackface and they had on like the curly wigs, and that bothered me. It bothered me greatly because I was thinking, don't you see what, and of course, thinking in my Black American mind, don't you see what you're doing? This is not cool. But, again, that's my Black American mind, and it's not up to me to protest based on my Black American views. It's up to the people in Aruba to protest based on their treatment there on those islands. So Aruba really was the only place that I've gone that I had trouble. Another problem with Aruba, I think, too, is that a lot of the darker skinned people are not really encouraged to work on the resorts, at least when I was there. And so you have a very light skinned, almost white presentation to the tourists. And so the group that I was with, we said, well, we want to see where the Black people live. Can you tell us? So And if my sister-in-law is watching, she's going to laugh because she was on that trip. And so we took a bus clear across the island to a place called Chocolate City. And we went to like a local festival and we had a great time. And I was like, oh, Chocolate City, that's where all the that's where they hide all the black people in Aruba because we're not seeing them at the resort. But it's so anyway, again, it's up to the people in Aruba to, to protest and do things their way. It's not up to me to impose my Black American views on them. But as a Black American in that country, that bothered me. But typically, I'm not bothered by things that I see in the Caribbean. I actually have a great time when I'm there.
Yeah. Did you get to ask any Arubian what that blackface meant? Is it supposed to be a caricature or is it just a celebration of their own culture? Did you get to ask those questions?
I did not. I think I was so outdone. And by that time, I was the last person flying out. So my group had left. So I had no one really to commiserate with except Facebook. But someone had mentioned that there is a Black Mummers Parade, I think in Philadelphia, where they wear the blackface. In addition, I think it was, I believe it's a Dutch tradition where they wear blackface around that time. And it's somebody named Pete. I can't remember his name in the Dutch tradition, I believe, but he's in blackface, and so I think it was more of a Dutch tradition that had been imported to the island, and so they probably saw it just as a part of the festival. And I know that people, in Europe protest that, but again, I try to keep my Black American mind in check. I'll tell you this really quickly. The one time that I got really upset as a Black American, and it made me realize, hey, your struggles are not their struggles. We were in England, and we were in the city. We were in northern England, the Lakes region. I forget which exact city we were in, but there was a pickaninny doll for sale in one of the shops. And I told the guy, I said, hey, this is a pickaninny doll. You shouldn't sell this. This is offensive. He said, well, offensive to who? I said, it's offensive to Black people. He said, there are no Black people around here. And I had to stop and think and think, you know what? They didn't have, I mean, their issues with slavery were different than our issues with slavery. I'm not going to change this guy's mind being upset. I'm just not going to patronize his shop and I'm just going to walk out. And it just made me realize that I can't change the world. I can only do my bit. I can be upset about it as a Black American, but I was wasting my words trying to convince this guy that selling that pickaninny doll was bad. And I have no idea if they even have the word pickaninny, if that's even in common use in England. I have no idea. But, I just said, it's not up to me. Let me just walk out of the shop because my money is green. It spends anywhere and I will not spend it here. More or less. I mean, it was the pound. So, but you know what I mean.
Thank you. Lesson learned.
Yes.
Yeah. And how do you feel visiting Mexico, our next door neighbor? What does
I
it feel
love
like?
I love Mexico. Mexico was great. And so I went on a cruise. That one was a cruise to Mexico. And the people are very nice, very friendly. I have no issue. We had no issues in Mexico. We went another time to Cozumel. The first time was Costa Maya. The next time was Cozumel. Had absolutely no issues. And of course, those were the touristy towns. And I can't say that I've actually been to the interior of Mexico, which is also on my list. But I had a great time. I'm sure they show the tourists a great time, but I had no problems in Mexico. It was so much fun to be there. And I know a little Spanish. I can't act like I am uh, bilingual because I'm not, but I can probably survive if I had to. If you drop me in the middle of Mexico, I could probably get to the bathroom and say thank you and tell you what my name is.
Possible Spanish?
Yes.
Yeah. And as a parent of someone who have sent their children to at least have a semester or more study abroad, what advice will you have for parents who are edging or not sure if it's worth it or if it's going to contribute positively to their children's education?
I believe it'll contribute greatly to your child's education. All three of my children took a trip before they graduated from high school. Each of them took a trip overseas, and it was amazing. I love it. They went through EF Tours, and EF Tours is an amazing company. At least our dealings with them, because you have adults who are supervising children. So any parents out there, if EF Tours comes knocking and you have the money or can scrape up the funds to send your child, I would advise you to do it. You know, it's scary to send your child overseas, but just think about it. It's scary to send them out the door every day to go to school. So at least they'll be supervised by parents if they go on the EF tours. The study abroad was a little bit different. My eldest daughter, she's probably studied abroad 5 or 6 times through college and grad school. My son studied abroad once, and his twin sister has no desire to study abroad as a college student. But even in those circumstances, I tried my best to do whatever I needed to do to help them to go or to send them, because I love creating citizens of the world. Because when I do that and they encounter people from other cultures, their problem solving skills explode. You know, they learn to look at things from different perspectives. They get, lots of different experiences under their belt. They become more confident and they're able to handle different situations because, mom's not there, dad's not there, and, your curling iron quit. What do? You got to figure it out. Or mom and dad aren't there and it's hot and you didn't bring too many pair of shorts. What are you going to do? You got to figure it out and go get some other shorts. So I encourage parents, if you're really, really, really on the edge, I would say let them go, because one thing that we know as lawyers, right, Emmanuel, is that these study abroad places aren't going to send people into situations where the providers could get sued. So that's one big thing to think about, that no one is probably sending your child into a dangerous location. But I would just encourage parents to think about it and send them. They will love you for forever.
Because what they will learn is invaluable, not something they can learn while they are over here.
No.
And do you use travel agencies to book your trips, or is it something you do on your own?
I do. I do both. So my sister-in-law, as I mentioned before, she's a travel agent, and what I do, because remember, Emmanuel, I'm not one to just leave things to chance. I have to have like every piece, every segment mapped out and everything. I figure out where I want to go, how I want to get there, how I want to do it, and then I allow my sister-in-law to book the trip. And so that way she gets credit for it, but I'm in control of the trip and where I go and what the destinations are and that sort of thing. But I but a travel agent is invaluable, and let me put the key in there. They're invaluable because if you are somewhere and that person could be your lifeline, so to speak, in case something happens. So say you miss your flight, the travel agent may be able to help you. Say, as this happened, we were running late for a cruise, and I called my sister-in-law, said, hey, the transport picked us up late, we're running really, really late, we're cutting it close. She hung up with me and got on the phone and began to call and say, hey, they know that you're coming, so just try to get there as quickly as possible. They know that you're coming. So a travel agent can be almost your best friend in a time of trouble if you're away from home, especially overseas, and you need someone back home who can help you figure out things on this side. Oh, and also travel insurance. I'm a big proponent of travel insurance as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And how does international travels now affect your perspectives as an American?
It gives me more empathy for people. It I think I had a pretty healthy dose of it before, but sometimes in America, we can be so focused on American issues and things and how they affect us. So in America, homelessness is always an issue, poverty is always an issue, and sometimes your blinders can be on about the root causes of those issues. But I think that when you travel internationally, I mean, you see that, poverty is a worldwide issue. It's not just an American issue. It's not just a Black issue. It's not just a white issue, an Asian issue. It's a worldwide issue. And you need to do whatever you can to help those, who are in need. Now, one person can't obviously save the world, but you can definitely be cognizant of what's going on. And when you go to those destinations and those locales, try to be a blessing. One of the things that my husband and I did when we went to Morocco, the Gate One had a school that they helped to establish, and we were able to go to the school. And they told us, "Hey, bring school supplies and all of that, and we'll give them to the kids." Now they didn't tell us what age group we would have, so I brought things like sheet protectors and pens and all of that. And it turns out we were in an elementary school. So elementary school kids aren't going to do anything with any of those. But I did bring notebook paper and things like that. But it was just so nice to see the little kids and see that, and of course the school had other grades. We just saw the elementary school kids. But it was so nice to, in some small way, give back or make a small impact on the lives of those kids. and to see them and to wave at them and to see the things that they were learning. It was just it was a really special moment.
I can only imagine. You keep mentioning Gate One. What is Gate One?
Gate One is one of a million travel companies. And so I'm not paid by Gate One. I wish I was, because then my next trip will be free, but it's not. So Gate One is gate1.com. If you go there, they have lots of different tours all over the world. Same with Trafalgar. Trafalgar.com has them as well. I tend to prefer Gate One over Trafalgar now, just due to the itineraries offered, the flexibility and payments. Gate One's always having a sale. Actually, if you sign up for their emails, you can get the weekly deals, and I've saved thousands of dollars that way on trips. But there are lots of different companies out there that you can go with. Kontiki is another one, and that's for the younger crowd. So if you happen to be watching this and thinking, "Hey, I don't want to go on the old people trips that lady's going on," you can look up Kontiki.com, and that's I think it's an offshoot of Trafalgar, and that's for the younger people, maybe the 18 to 30-year-old range or something like that. So yeah, and I definitely encourage people. And this is the thing too, Emmanuel. People, if you have a desire to travel, it's not out of reach. You may have to save on it. Like, just like if you wanted to go to Vegas, you probably have to save and go to Vegas. But the thing about it is, if you can identify where you'd like to go, start saving the money, put a little bit up, do a Christmas club or whatever you have to do, and book the trip and make payments towards it. And I think all trips have to be paid off like 90 days before you travel. So if you book it for 2 years in advance, that gives you lots of time to pay it off. So, it's not out of reach for people. We see plenty of millennials traveling. Plenty of people who otherwise thought that they couldn't travel, and that means that whoever you are, who's watching, you can travel too.
Thank you. And you're a writer. Do you also write travel blogs?
I did. So I do. So when I go on a vacation, I always write a pretty long missive on Facebook. One, it's educational and people are able to read what's happening to me, and I think that I'm pretty funny. People may disagree with that, but I think I'm hilarious. And so I try to inject a little bit of that into my blog, my Facebook post, I should say. And I did have a blog, but it got hijacked. I got hijacked by some other company, and I just shut it down. And at the time, I didn't have time to restart it, but I may start it in the future. But I did have several articles on there about tips and tricks for travel and things like that, and some of my funnier stories that I've had, like oh gosh, my first trip to Prague, Vienna, and Budapest, where the travel director Wolfgang, I love Wolfgang, he told us that if we came upon the little Roma kids, that we could slap them if they tried to steal from us. That in America we called it child abuse, but there in Budapest they called it an education. And I was horrified that he said that, but it was just so ridiculous. I had to laugh because you want me, I'm a mandated reporter in the state of Ohio, and you want me to slap a child because they're trying to steal from me. That was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard. But to him, I mean, Wolfgang was an Austrian, and so to him that was just kind of what you did with kids. And I was like, man, this is so ridiculous. But that story was up on my blog, and people who know me, my hair is I'm always checking my hair and going live and complaining about my hair. So things about like hair struggles overseas or that were on the blog. So I do try to document where I go and what I'm doing and how funny things are as they occur.
Thank you. When do you plan to release your first book?
Um, Oh, Emmanuel, it's still on the baby face. Don't you see me rocking? I'm singing lullabies. I know I need to release it. I do. I need to release it. It's funny. I think everybody has that thing where they think they're really good at it, but if they let it out, then maybe it won't be as good as they think. I just need to. Honestly, the thing that's held me back, I really need a really, really good editor. So I had somebody kind of proofread and kind of edit, but I needed like one final go, and I need to fix the beginning and on and on and on. So I don't know, Emmanuel. We'll see. But
I
but I'll,
I
I'll I'll send you a text and let you know when it comes out.
I understand. I understand, because if you are really good at what you do, You just don't rush out projects.
Thank you.
You have
I'm
to make
gonna
sure
do
all the
that.
I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed.
Yes, I'm gonna adopt that. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, thank you so much for spending this time with us on Legal Angle and for sharing your travel experiences. It's been wonderful.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me. We didn't talk much about legal stuff, but it doesn't matter because when you travel, everything's fun, and the legal stuff is how I'm able to pay for my travels. But I'd be happy to come on and maybe another time and talk about legal stuff.
Exactly. Yes, we can do that. And for those of you watching us at home, thank you for spending this time with us. We appreciate you. And until next time, stay safe. Thank you.
Bye bye.